I never thought a lie could feel like setting a trap for yourself. Yet here I was, sitting across from a woman whose smile was both polite and terrifying, clutching a menu I didn't even want to read. "So, tell me about him," she said, eyes sparkling with all the joy of someone convinced they were about to unearth the perfect match for her daughter. I laughed, a little too sharply. "Oh, him. Well, he's amazing. Smart, funny, devastatingly good-looking." My throat felt dry as I wove an imaginary picture of a boyfriend who didn't exist. Every word made me feel like I was stepping on glass. But I had to survive this. My mom's relentless matchmaking streak had gone too far this time. Her gaze softened, suspicious but hopeful. "Sounds wonderful. Where did you two meet?" Panicked, my brain throwing out the first name that popped into it. "Ethan." The woman beamed. "Ethan. Such a lovely name. And what does he do?" He's in tech. Yeah. Software. Very busy. Busy enough not to be sitting here. Probably. And that was exactly the point." She nodded approvingly, jotting notes as though she had just found a golden gem hidden under a rock. My stomach sank. This was working too well. Then came the inevitable. "Do you have any pictures?" I coughed, digging through my mental Rolodex for plausible excuses. "Well, he's private. Secretive. You know. But trust me, he's perfect." The woman's eyes narrowed slightly, skepticism creeping in. My pulse raced. This was where the lie would die, and I'd be trapped forever in her relentless plans for me. Then, just as I was rehearsing my escape, the door swung open, and the cafe's soft chime filled the air. I didn't recognize him at first. The man who walked in exuded an annoying confidence that instantly made my stomach tighten. Tall, lean, sandy blonde hair catching the sunlight, and a smirk that suggested he already knew some secret I didn't. It was Ethan. Or, well, the closest thing to Ethan I had ever imagined. I froze, the words on my tongue dying. This couldn't be real. My greatest rival from college, the one who always had a way of turning every friendly competition into a humiliating defeat, was standing just a few feet away. And somehow, he had agreed to pretend to be my fake boyfriend. Hi, he said casually, sliding into the seat next to me, all charm and danger. "I hear you need a boyfriend today." The woman blinked in surprise. "Oh, you must be Ethan." I groaned inwardly. My plan had just spectacularly backfired. He leaned in slightly, just enough that I felt the heat of his presence. "That's me. At your service." His voice was low, teasing, and it made my heart do something utterly unprofessional. The woman smiled, completely convinced, and I fought the urge to sink under the table. Meanwhile, Ethan's eyes met mine, and there was that familiar spark, half challenge, half amusement. He knew exactly what he was doing, and I hated him for it, sort of. "Well," she said, clasping her hands together, "I think this is perfect. Ethan, you seem just right for my daughter." I opened my mouth to protest, but Ethan gave a small, mischievous shrug and winked at me. Okay, maybe this was going to be worse than I thought. Over the next hour, we wove a story so elaborate it could have won an award for fiction. Ethan played the part flawlessly, laughing at all the right moments, pretending to be completely enamored, and occasionally leaning just a little too close, making my stomach churn and my pulse spike. "See," he whispered once, as he brushed past my hand to grab a coffee cup. "Not so bad. Pretending, right?" I wanted to hit him, but the warmth in his touch lingered far too long for me to be entirely angry. By the time the woman left, satisfied and chattering about wedding plans I didn't want to think about, Ethan and I were alone. "So, he said, leaning back. That wasn't terrible, was it? Terrible, I asked, voice rising despite myself. It was humiliating. I could die of embarrassment right now. He laughed a sound that sent shivers down my spine. You make it sound like fun. It wasn't fun. I snapped, then immediately regretted it. He tilted his head, smirking in that way that drove me insane. You're adorable when you're flustered, he said, voice teasing but not cruel. Don't worry. I didn't sign up for this to ruin your day, entirely. I opened my mouth, then closed it. What was I even supposed to say? That my heart was suddenly racing not from embarrassment, but because he was sitting there, close enough that I could feel it. He leaned forward, just a bit, and our shoulders brushed. It shouldn't have mattered. It definitely shouldn't have made me think about how warm his hand looked, or how safe it felt to be near him, even in this ridiculous lie. All right, he said finally, standing and grabbing his jacket. I should probably go. Don't forget, Ethan's always just a phone call away. I watched him leave, every step echoing in my chest. My brain screamed at me to run after him, to tell him how much this was already twisting my life into knots I didn't understand, but I stayed frozen. After a long, awkward sigh, I realized something terrifying. I had enjoyed it. That ridiculous hour of lies, pretending, and stolen touches had done something no one had done in a long time. It had made me feel alive. And the worst part, Ethan was probably feeling it too. That smirk of his, that glint in his eyes as he leaned too close, wasn't just acting. I knew it, and I hated that I knew it. The next day, I tried to avoid him, tried to pretend that our little game had been harmless. But life, as it often does, refused to be that simple. He found me in the student lounge, leaning against the table with that same confident grin. Hey, he said casually. Miss me? I rolled my eyes, trying to appear annoyed. What are you doing here? Just checking in on my boyfriend, he said, winking. My stomach betrayed me with an involuntary shiver. You are unbelievable, I muttered, glaring, but not hard enough. Maybe, he admitted. But you love it. I hate you, I whispered, louder than intended. And yet, he said, stepping closer so our shoulders brushed again. You can't stay away. I wanted to run, to scream, to laugh at the ridiculousness of it all. Instead, I just froze, caught in the gravity of someone who had always been my rival, my thorn, and now, something far more complicated. He leaned a fraction closer. So, dinner tonight. Just for fun. No mom. No blind dates. No lies. I hesitated, heart hammering. What if it's a trap? He grinned. Then it's the best trap you've ever fallen for. And somehow, against all logic, I knew he was right. The next hours were a blur of stolen glances, awkward smiles, and tiny touches that shouldn't have meant anything but did. By the time I got home, I was dizzy, laughing at myself for ever thinking this would be simple. Ethan, the pretend boyfriend who had somehow become the center of every anxious, fluttering thought, had no idea the chaos he'd just unleashed. I didn't know what the future held. But one thing was certain, my life had just become infinitely more complicated and infinitely more thrilling because of a lie. And because my greatest rival had taken on the role of my fake boyfriend with an ease and charm that made my head spin. I should have hated him. I should have plotted revenge for every humiliation, every challenge he'd ever thrown my way. But instead, I couldn't stop thinking about him. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't in years, hope. Hope, and something dangerously close to excitement. And maybe, just maybe, the lie was about to become real. The evening air was crisp as I stepped out of my apartment, the city lights twinkling like tiny stars scattered across Manhattan. Ethan was already waiting at the corner cafe we had agreed on, leaning against the brick wall with that insufferable smirk that somehow made my chest tighten. "Right on time," he said, sliding a pair of sunglasses down his nose to give me a mock-serious look. "Or maybe, fashionably late." "I'm on time," I muttered, rolling my eyes. "Barely." "Barely counts," he said, pushing open the door to the cafe and leading the way inside like he owned the place. My stomach fluttered despite my efforts to act indifferent. We found a small table in the back, tucked away in a corner where the light spilled softly across the wooden surface. The cafe smelled of roasted coffee beans and baked goods, a comforting mix that somehow made the tension between us sharper. "So," Ethan began, leaning back in his chair with his usual ease. "No moms, no blind dates, no fake boyfriends tonight. Just..." I tilted my head, studying him. He looked relaxed, casual, and impossibly confident, but there was a glint in his eyes that made me uneasy. "Us. We barely know each other outside of lies." He shrugged, smiling that infuriating grin. Yet, I felt my face heat up. Something about the way he said it made the word feel like a promise or maybe a warning. I tried to focus on the menu, flipping through options I didn't really care about. Every so often, I caught him watching me, his gaze not quite teasing, not quite serious, but something in between that made it impossible to look away. Finally, I muttered, "Why are you doing this? Helping me? I mean..." His smile softened, just a fraction. "Because I owe you one. For all those times you humiliated me in class." He paused, letting the words hang between us. "And maybe because I like seeing you like this." I choked on my coffee, nearly spilling it all over the table. "What does that even mean?" "It means," he said, leaning in a bit closer, "that I like seeing this side of you, the flustered, panicked, ridiculously adorable side." I wanted to groan, wanted to tell him he was impossible, but my heart betrayed me. That brush of his knee against mine, the subtle warmth of his shoulder near mine was distracting. And more than that, it was intoxicating. We ordered dinner, and for the first time in Horser, maybe Daisy, found myself laughing genuinely. Ethan had a way of pulling humor out of the smallest things, making me forget the world outside the cafe, forget the lies, forget everything but the two of us. "So," I said cautiously, "when did this start? You helping me with the fake boyfriend thing?" He leaned back, pretending to think. Probably the moment you said my name out loud in front of your mom. Pure panic. I just thought, why not? Why not?" I echoed, incredulous. "You know this is ridiculous. We're ridiculous." He smiled softly this time, without the usual teasing edge. "Maybe. But ridiculous doesn't mean bad." My heart thumped. I wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some semblance of control, but the warmth in his eyes made my words falter. He wasn't just teasing me. There was a sincerity there that I couldn't ignore. Dinner was a blur of conversation and laughter, of stolen glances and touches that lingered too long. Every brush of his hand against mine made me feel dizzy, like I was teetering on the edge of something I couldn't quite name. After we left the cafe, the streets were alive with the hum of New York nightlife. We walked side by side, shoulders occasionally brushing, the tension between us a tangible force that neither of us acknowledged directly. "You know," Ethan said casually, "I could walk you home. Make sure the dangerous city doesn't eat you alive." I snorted. "I'm not a child." No, but you're my fake boyfriend, he said, smirking. So it's my duty. I tried to protest, but the corner of my mouth twitched upward despite myself. There was something maddeningly charming about the way he navigated every situation, teasing yet caring in equal measure. We reached my building, and for a moment, neither of us moved. The air between us was thick with something unspoken, something dangerous. My mind raced, warning me to stop, to retreat, to not let this go any further. But Ethan, he leaned just a bit closer, his hand brushing against mine ever so slightly. "Good night," he said softly, his eyes locking onto mine in a way that made my chest ache. "Good night," I whispered, barely able to breathe. I watched him walk away, every step echoing in my chest, until he disappeared into the crowd. My heart was a chaotic mess of panic and longing, my mind replaying every glance, every touch, every word. The next few days were a delicate dance of proximity and distance. Ethan found ways to appear when I least expected it, sometimes with casual smiles, sometimes with subtle gestures that made my pulse spike. Each encounter was a challenge, a test of willpower I was rapidly losing. One afternoon, as I sat in the library trying to focus on studying, he appeared beside me, leaning against the table. "Studying hard or hardly studying?" he asked, voice teasing. "Hard studying," I lied, glaring at him. "Leave me alone." "Sure," he said, settling into the chair across from me anyway. "Just thought you could use a break. Or maybe some company." My heart raced. "Company?" "Yeah," he said, leaning forward slightly, lowering his voice. "The best kind of company." I wanted to roll my eyes, wanted to act annoyed, but the warmth in his gaze made my defenses crumble. For the first time, I realized that this wasn't just about pretending anymore. Every glance, every touch, every shared moment was pulling me deeper, and I didn't want to stop. Days turned into weeks, each encounter building a tension that was impossible to ignore. We found excuses to spend time together, sometimes studying, sometimes just wandering the streets, talking about everything and nothing. The lie that had brought us together was fading, replaced by something real, something dangerous, something thrilling. One evening, as we walked along the river, the city lights reflecting on the water, Ethan took my hand. Just a simple gesture, but it sent a jolt through me that I couldn't ignore. "You're quiet," he said softly, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "Thinking," I muttered, unsure what to say. "About me," he teased, but there was an edge of seriousness there too. I froze. Did I want him to know? Did I want him to see the way my heart was tethered to every movement, every word, every smile? Maybe, I admitted finally, voice barely above a whisper. He smiled, leaning closer until our foreheads nearly touched. "Good," he said softly, "because I'm thinking about you too." The confession hung between us, fragile and shimmering. My chest ached, my mind raced, and for a moment, the world disappeared. There was only him, only the warmth of his presence, only the thrill of something new and terrifying. We walked the rest of the way in silence, hands intertwined, hearts racing in synchrony. That night, for the first time, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this lie had led me to something real, something worth holding on to. Back in my apartment, collapsed onto my bed, replaying the evening over and over. Ethan's touch, his words, his smile, they haunted me in the best way possible. I realized that the rivalry, the teasing, the constant push and pull had always been a part of the attraction between us. And now, with the boundaries blurred, everything felt dangerously close to falling into place. By the end of the week, the fake boyfriend act had morphed into a dance of emotions neither of us could ignore. Every encounter was a test, every smile a spark, every touch a promise. I was terrified of what this meant, terrified of the vulnerability, terrified of letting someone in. But with Ethan, the fear was laced with excitement, with longing, with the undeniable pull of something profound. I realized that whatever this was, whatever we were, right, was worth the risk. Worth the chaos. Worth the sleepless nights and racing hearts. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to run away. The week that followed felt like walking on a wire stretched thin over the city. Every message from Ethan, every glance across the campus, every casual brush of his hand made my chest tighten and my mind spin. The line between pretense and reality was disappearing fast, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. It was Tuesday when it happened. I had just finished a grueling lecture, my notes scattered across the library table, when I noticed him leaning casually against the bookshelf, arms crossed, a mischievous grin playing on his lips. "Hey," he said, stepping closer. "You look stressed." "Because I am," I muttered, pushing my hair back. "Why are you here? Don't you have your own life?" "Sure," he said, sliding into the chair across from me. "But apparently, my fake boyfriend duties include moral support." I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "This is ridiculous." "It's also fun," he said, voice low. "And you know it." I peeked through my fingers. "Fun for you, maybe." His eyes softened, losing just a fraction of their usual playful sharpness. "Not just for me," he said quietly. "For us." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. We weren't supposed to be anything but a lie, a convenient fiction to keep my mom at bay. And yet, with every laugh, every stolen glance, every accidental touch, that lie had grown roots, entwining with something real, something that scared me. Before I could respond, his hand brushed mine across the table. It was a gentle, tentative touch, but it sent a shockwave through me. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my racing heart. "Careful," I whispered, though my voice trembled. "You're dangerous." He chuckled softly. "Dangerous, maybe, but in a good way." The library around us blurred, the world shrinking to the warmth of his hand and the intensity of his gaze. I wanted to pull away, to remind myself that he was my rival, my tormentor, my adversary. But instead, I stayed, letting the moment stretch, fragile and electric. We walked out together, the sun dipping low in the sky, painting the streets with gold and orange. Every step was a conversation, every glance a challenge, every brush of our arms a spark. "You know," he said, breaking the silence, "this whole fake boyfriend thing is getting complicated." I shot him a look. Complicated? That's an understatement. He smiled, that maddening smirk that made my stomach flip. Complicated is good. It means it matters. I wanted to argue, to tell him he didn't understand. But the truth was, he did. Every word, every gesture, every teasing smile revealed a depth I hadn't expected. And somewhere beneath the rivalry, beneath the teasing, beneath the chaos, there was a connection I couldn't deny. Later that evening, we found ourselves at the quiet park near the river, the city lights reflecting on the water like a million tiny stars. Ethan leaned against the railing, looking out over the river, and I stood beside him, hands barely brushing. "You're quiet," he said softly. "Thinking about me." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. Maybe, I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. He turned to me, eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my knees weak. Good, he said. Because I'm thinking about you too. The confession lingered between us, fragile and shimmering. My chest ached, my mind raced, and for a moment, the world disappeared. There was only him, only the warmth of his presence, only the thrill of something new and terrifying. And then, just as the tension peaked, a sudden shout from the other side of the park snapped us out of it. Some kids were laughing, chasing each other with reckless joy, and the spell was broken. Ethan chuckled softly, a low, amused sound that made my heart ache. Maybe another time, he said, his hand brushing mine one last time before he stepped back. We'll see where this goes. I watched him walk away, every step echoing in my chest. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions: longing, fear, excitement, and a strange, almost dizzying sense of anticipation. I knew that whatever this was, it was no longer just a lie. It was something real, something dangerous, something I couldn't resist. The next few days were a delicate dance of proximity and distance. Ethan had a way of appearing when I least expected it, sometimes with casual smiles, sometimes with subtle gestures that made my pulse spike. Each encounter was a test, a challenge, a temptation I found impossible to resist. One evening, as we sat on a bench overlooking the city, the lights sparkling like tiny gems below us, Ethan turned to me with a serious expression that made my heart stutter. "Can I ask you something?" he said, voice low. I nodded, trying to steady my nerves. Of course. He took a deep breath, eyes searching mine. Do you, like me? The question hit me like a bolt of lightning. My mind screamed, warning me of the risk, of the vulnerability, of the possibility of heartbreak. But my heart betrayed me, thudding wildly in my chest. I think I do, I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. A slow, incredulous smile spread across his face. Finally, he said softly, leaning closer, because I've been waiting for you to say that. Our foreheads touched, a tender connection that sent shivers down my spine. The city around us faded, leaving only the two of us, tangled in a web of emotions too complex to untangle, yet impossible to resist. The next weeks were a whirlwind. Every moment with Ethan was charged with electricity, a mixture of teasing, challenge, and deepening intimacy. We explored the city together, shared secrets and laughter, and discovered a connection that went beyond rivalry or pretense. One night, as we sat on the rooftop of my building, the city lights stretching endlessly before us, Ethan took my hand in both of his gaze unwavering. I know this started as a lie, he said softly, but I don't want it to stay that way. I want this. I felt tears prick my eyes, a mixture of relief, joy, and disbelief. I want that too, I whispered, leaning into him. He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face, and for the first time, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, the chaos and lies had led me to something real, something worth holding on to. As the weeks turned into months, our relationship blossomed, a delicate balance of laughter, love, and the occasional playful rivalry that had always defined us. The fake boyfriend act faded into memory, replaced by a bond forged in honesty, trust, and the thrill of discovering someone who understood and challenged me in equal measure. We faced obstacles, of course, friends who were skeptical, moments of doubt, and the lingering fear of vulnerability, but through it all, we held on to each other. Every touch, every laugh, every shared secret strengthened the connection between us, turning something that began as a lie into a love that was real, deep, and unshakable. One evening, as we walked hand in hand along the river, the city lights reflecting in our eyes, Ethan stopped and turned to me, his expression serious yet tender. "I know it hasn't always been easy," he said softly, "but I want you to know that I'm here. Always." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me that I had never known before. "I know," I whispered, leaning into him. "And I'm here too." He kissed me then, gently at first, then with growing intensity, a promise of everything we had discovered together and everything yet to come. The city around us faded, leaving only the two of us, entwined in a moment of pure, unguarded love. As we pulled back, our foreheads resting together, I realized that the lie that had brought us together was no longer important. What mattered was the truth we had found in each other, a love that was real, powerful, and infinitely beautiful. And in that moment, with the city lights twinkling around us and Ethan's hand in mine, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Because sometimes, the most unexpected lies lead to the most extraordinary truths. The spring air in New York carried a hint of warmth, the kind that made every corner of the city feel alive with possibility. Ethan and I had spent the last few months navigating our new reality, one that began as a lie but had grown into something neither of us could have anticipated. Every day was a discovery, every touch a reminder of how fragile and beautiful connection could be. It was a Saturday afternoon when he showed up at my apartment, a bouquet of daisies in hand and that infuriating grin plastered across his face. "I thought you could use some sunshine," he said, handing me the flowers. I took them, a smile tugging at my lips despite my best efforts to act indifferent. "You really know how to make an entrance," I said, sniffing the blossoms and feeling a warmth bloom in my chest. He shrugged, leaning casually against the doorframe. "It's a talent." The honesty in his gaze, the soft warmth in his smile, made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time, completely safe, completely seen. And for a moment, I allowed myself to breathe in that feeling, to let the world outside fade. We spent the afternoon wandering the streets of Manhattan, stopping at little cafes, sharing slices of pizza, laughing at the absurdities of city life. The rivalry that had once defined us was gone, replaced by a playful banter that hinted at shared history and mutual understanding. "You know," he said, leaning on the railing of the Brooklyn Bridge as we watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, "I used to think you were impossible." I laughed, elbowing him lightly. "I could say the same about you." He grinned, tugging my hand gently. "And yet, here we are." I nodded, the wind tugging at my hair, the warmth of his hand grounding me in a way that made my heart skip. Here we are. The weeks that followed were a rhythm of discovery. We learned each other's quirks, our fears, our favorite coffee orders, the little things that made life feel lighter. Every morning brought a smile. Every night a soft kiss goodbye that lingered a little longer than it should have. It wasn't always perfect. We argued, sometimes heatedly, about trivial things, the right way to load a dishwasher, who got the last slice of pizza, but even in those moments, the connection between us only deepened. Each disagreement ended with laughter, apologies, and a renewed appreciation for the other. One rainy evening, I found myself curled up on the couch with him, the sound of the storm outside blending with the soft hum of the city. He traced patterns on my arm with his finger, a comforting gesture that had become second nature. "You're quiet," he murmured, resting his head on my shoulder. "Just thinking," I said, nuzzling closer. "About." His fingers paused, hovering over my skin, About us. About how unexpected it all was. I whispered. And how much I care about you. His eyes met mine, glistening with emotion, and I felt my chest tighten. I care about you too, he said softly. More than I ever thought possible. We stayed like that for hours, the storm outside mirroring the intensity of our emotions inside. There was no need for words, no need for pretense, just the quiet understanding that we had found something rare, something worth holding on to. As the days turned into weeks, I realized that the lie that had brought us together had transformed into a love that was authentic, resilient, and unshakable. Every touch, every glance, every shared laugh reinforced the bond between us. Then came the night that changed everything. Ethan had invited me to a rooftop party, a celebration of the end of the semester and the start of something new. I had been nervous, unsure of how to navigate the social scene with him by my side. But as soon as I saw him waiting for me at the top of the stairs, all my doubts melted away. He took my hand, pulling me into the crowd with a confidence that made my pulse race. Come on, he said, smiling down at me. Tonight is about us. We danced under the string lights, the music pulsing around us, the city skyline a breathtaking backdrop. Every step, every spin, every laugh was a celebration of what we had built together. And when he pulled me close, his forehead resting against mine, I felt a sense of belonging I had never known before. Later, as the party dwindled and the city lights twinkled below, he led me to the edge of the rooftop, where we could see the world stretching endlessly before us. I have something to ask you, he said, his voice trembling slightly, a rare vulnerability in his eyes. I looked at him, heart pounding. What is it? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. My breath caught as he knelt before me, the lights of the city reflecting in his eyes. I know this started as a lie, he said, opening the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring. But what we have is real. You're the person I want by my side, through every challenge, every triumph, every ordinary day and every extraordinary moment. Will you be with me? Truly, fully, without pretense. Tears pricked my eyes, and I felt my heart overflow with emotion. The journey from lies to love, from rivalry to intimacy, had led us here, to this perfect, fragile moment. Yes, I whispered, my voice choked with happiness. Yes, I will. He smiled, slipping the ring onto my finger, and for the first time, I felt completely, irrevocably whole. We embraced, the city below us fading into insignificance, and I knew that whatever challenges awaited, we would face them together. The months that followed were a continuation of that joy. We navigated life as a couple, each day deepening our connection, each moment reinforcing the love that had grown from something unexpected and unlikely. Friends and family came to know us as partners, not rivals, and our bond became a source of inspiration and admiration for those around us. One evening, as we walked hand in hand along the river, the air warm with the scent of blooming flowers, Ethan stopped and turned to me, eyes shining. I want to build a life with you, he said softly, voice full of certainty. A life full of laughter, challenges, and love. Will you stay with me, always? I smiled, feeling tears of joy spill down my cheeks. Always, I said, squeezing his hand. And in that moment, surrounded by the lights of the city and the quiet hum of life, I knew that the journey from pretense to truth had led us to something extraordinary. Something real. Something lasting. We kissed then, a soft, lingering kiss that spoke of promises, dreams, and the unbreakable bond we had forged. the world around us disappeared, leaving only the two of us, entwined in love, trust, and the quiet certainty that we had found something rare and beautiful. Life continued, of course, with its challenges and surprises, but together we faced them with courage, humor, and unwavering support. Our love, born from a lie, had transformed into a foundation strong enough to withstand anything. Years later, as we stood together in our first shared apartment, looking out over the city that had witnessed the beginning of our story, I realized that the greatest truth of all was simple: love, in its purest form, could emerge from the most unexpected places. And ours, improbable as it began, was extraordinary. Hand in hand, we faced the future with hope, laughter, and the certainty that whatever came our way, we would face it together. Because sometimes, the most unexpected lies lead to the most extraordinary truths. And in that truth, we found everything we had ever wanted. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.